All right, welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. As the road to SummerSlam rages on, only a little over 2 weeks away, 15 days away until SummerSlam, where I will be in attendance. Today we're breaking down the 2005 installment of SummerSlam as seen on the WWE Network. Now, I've not shied away before in talking about here on the show how 2002, 2005, 2008, and 2011, it just so happens to be 3-year intervals, are my favorite years in wrestling. I don't know what it is about those years, but they were just all so great for different reasons. '02, kind of the start of the ruthless aggression era, awesome wrestling all around. 2005 was kind of the end of that era and beginning of a new one with all the up-and-coming stars in that time. From John Cena to Batista, Randy Orton, Rey Mysterio, Edge, etc., etc. 2008, the year that I got into wrestling, and then 2011 primarily for the summer of Punk and everything else that came with that summer season. But yeah, 2005, love that year. This show, I was a very big fan of. I thought this was a great show. And interestingly enough, my first time watching this show in its entirety, so it was kind of fun watching it back earlier today. But kicking off the show itself, though, for the United States Championship, Chris Benoit contending for the gold against Orlando Jordan. Now, a month before this, at the Great American Bash, I believe their title match had ended in some sort of fuck finish, some sort of disqualification with Jordan getting himself disqualified, thus retaining the U.S. title, a rematch on the show. The match ended in all of 25 seconds. Benoit forced Jordan to tap out. A new U.S. champion was crowned. Place goes crazy. Nice way of kicking off the show, and I couldn't say I was disappointed. Jordan wasn't a bad athlete. He was actually very, very talented as an athlete. I just didn't really care for his character. He did well in kind of like the cabinet role for JBL. But other than that, though, on his own, he really was not anything special whatsoever. And I was shocked he held that title for as long as he did. Kind of had that heat going where, people just really wanted to see him to lose that title. That's why it kind of worked well in this scenario when he lost the title as quickly as he did to Benoit, in a huge way of kicking off the show with Benoit capturing the gold. So enjoyed that. A little moment there of Benoit capturing the championship. And fun fact for you, of course, this would be the quickest match in SummerSlam history. I don't know if it was just the quickest title match. I think it was quickest match period, shortest match period in SummerSlam history. So they would go on to break it 5 years later, because I guess they didn't want to kind of associate that record with Benoit. They would break the record 5 years later, or 4 years later rather, at SummerSlam 2009 with Christian and Regal. I don't know what the exact time code on that match was, but I know it was definitely shorter than this match. And that may have been like 10 seconds. But anyway, from there we go to our next match, Edge versus Matt Hardy. Now, this show was so stacked with so many great matches. You had Cena and Jericho for the WWE title, Batista, JBL for the world title, Orton and Taker, Hogan and Michaels, Mysterio and Eddie. You had so many big blockbuster bouts that this match, although it was a huge rivalry for the Raw brand that had to go on second, that's how stacked this show was. And that's what I loved it. That's what I loved about it so much. But anyway, yeah, Edge and Hardy in match number 2 here. Kind of a disappointment. With all the heat that Edge had coming into this match, it was good to put him over. Matt, I feel like, was a missed opportunity. I'm not just saying that because I'm a huge fan of his, but I feel like in 2005, that was his summer to break out because people were so hot for him to come back to the company that year. He ultimately did, kicked off that red-hot feud with Edge that summer, leading into this highly anticipated SummerSlam encounter. And the match went all of 5 minutes. Edge pretty much dominated all of it. As some would say, a burial of Matt Hardy, which is somewhat true, somewhat not true. He would win in 5 minutes. Edge would win via referee stoppage. Matt Hardy, it's not like he would go on to become a jobber right after that. In time, he would, unfortunately. But right after that, he would at Unforgiven, he would go on to beat Edge in a steel cage match. He didn't win the feud. That would end a couple weeks later after that, and then a huge ladder match on Raw. Great match, by the way. But still, Matt Hardy would get some wins at some point in the feud, so he wasn't completely buried. This was not a completely one-sided feud, but still, that was kind of a disappointment, but it did have Edge go over strong, although Matt Hardy should have been better protected, given how over he was at that period in time. It was still kind of a dominant victory for Edge, and that's why, I ranked him as high as I did on the list of the best Mr. Money in the Banks of all time. Not just because he was the original Mr. Money in the Bank. I wrote an article about this back in June, I want to say. I think June, for Bleacher Report, ranking every Money in the Bank holder, and he was obviously my undisputed number 1, not just because he was the first ever, but because he was so brilliantly booked, along with Seth Rollins for the most part, but Edge more so, because the guy went from, in his feuds with Kane, Matt Hardy, Chris Benoit, Ric Flair, anybody they put in front of him, he beat, and then he went on to win that championship after 10 long months of holding on to that briefcase on the first Sunday, the first ever WWE event of the year at New Year's Revolution. What a way to kick off that year. And that was ultimately Edge's year of 2006 when he won that title for the very first time. But yeah, going back to what I was saying before, though, kind of a disappointment of a match, but it was somewhat effective in getting heat on Edge, so it was kind of good for that, at the very least. After that, we had a ladder match for the custody of Dominic, which was Rey Mysterio's son, or Eddie Guerrero's legitimate son. So the first and only match in WWE history to be contested over the custody of a child. I mean, you would think about that on paper like, wow, this is dumb, this is so illogical, only in wrestling kind of thing, but that feud was so good. In 05, that's another reason why I love that year so much, because excuse me, you had so many great feuds going on that year. You had Triple H and Batista, Cena and JBL, Cena and Jericho, Orton and Undertaker, Rey Mysterio and Eddie, all these different feuds at various points in the year. Cena and Angle later on that year too. So many great feuds, so many great matches. This was a prime example of that between Rey and Eddie. They were also kind of telling the story, and it was a little bit backwards, that Eddie couldn't beat Rey Mysterio, and he never did. I think the commentator said that even after Rey Mysterio won this match, that had made Rey like 7-0 against Eddie Guerrero, which was crazy. I always thought, in retrospect, I was not a fan at the time, of course, but they should have given Eddie at least one win during the feud. They never ultimately did. Maybe afterwards, I believe, but up to that point anyway, Eddie had never beaten Rey Mysterio, which you would think would be the other way around. It's usually the babyface wants to beat the heel, and they kind of have to, the ultimate underdog, which would work perfectly with Rey Mysterio's character, but I digress. Other than that, though, I mean, this feud, they really got me intrigued by it, because like I said, kind of coming into it, you see that match on paper, like the custody of a child up for grabs in a ladder match, really, but then if you watch the video package and the commentators talking about it, making it seem like a huge thing, you really start to get intrigued by it, you get enthralled by the storyline. That was definitely the case here, throwing the fact the match was probably the best of their series, which is certainly saying something. They had a great match at WrestleMania, an equally good match, if not a better match at Judgment Day, pretty good match at the Great American Bash as well. And this was easily the best of the bunch in the ladder match stipulation. There was one scary spot when I think Eddie was going for a sunset flip on Rey, and Eddie had landed weird, or it was very strange, and Rey kind of landed awkwardly. It was a little strange the way it kind of played out, and a lot of people just started their feet like, holy shit, like, is he okay, kind of thing. But there were a lot of crazy spots. It ended up paying off in the end. A great match, and probably one of, if not the best match of the night, hands down. But you get to the finish, Eddie Guerrero about to win the thing, about to win the, the briefcase with the legal papers inside for the custody of Dominic. Vicky Guerrero comes out, who is, of course, the legitimate wife of Eddie Guerrero at that time, comes out and stops him from winning because she feels like it's not right, whatever. And Rey Mysterio celebrates with his son after winning the match. So a great match, and told even a better story. So delivered from an in-ring standpoint, delivered from a storyline standpoint. I thought it was awesome all the way around. And like I said, I'm not going to say I had low expectations for it, but, even coming in, you kind of have your doubts considering what's on the line here, something so outlandish for the custody of a child, but it worked in this scenario. I didn't even know that, by the way. I'm pretty sure that was real. And they played it off in the storyline with Rey Mysterio, with Dominic being the legitimate son, the biological son of Eddie Guerrero, but Rey Mysterio took him in, and he and Angie, his real-life wife, had taken, care of him throughout his childhood. I never knew that. I thought it was all just kind of a storyline. Maybe it is a storyline, I have no idea. But I thought that was really interesting, though. So after that, we had Kurt Angle versus Eugene for Kurt Angle's Olympic medal. Now, this match was really weird, and like I said before, this show was stacked with a lot of great feuds and matches and blockbuster bouts, but then you have Angle versus Eugene. It didn't make any sense. I mean, it kind of made sense from a storyline standpoint to do what they did the year before with Triple H and Eugene, with Eugene being an honorary member of Evolution, him costing him the World Heavyweight Championship. Basic stuff. I get it, but I said in that review for SummerSlam 04 that was kind of a waste, in my opinion, of Triple H's talent on that show, and they could have been doing so much more with him. They made the most of that match. I kind of feel the same way about Angle. He and Shawn Michaels had two amazing matches at WrestleMania and at Vengeance, a couple months before this, the Raw pay-per-view before this one. And he goes from that to facing Eugene, who I guess they really wanted to have. Maybe they were trying to elevate him. I have no idea. I mean, he was gone from the company about a year and a half after this. So, or 2 and a half years after this. So, they really didn't end up going anywhere with his character whatsoever. So, like I said, it kind of felt like a waste of Angle in this scenario. I don't know who else you would have put him up against. There weren't many
real heels on the Raw roster at that period in time. Shawn Michaels was only heel for that feud with Hulk Hogan, and Jericho was busy with Cena, and after Jericho would leave, then Angle would go after the championship. So at least they would do something with him after this fact, after this point. But still, I mean, the match was exactly what it should have been, and what the Triple H match should have been, to be quite honest with you. Where Eugene gets some hope spots. He would hit the rock bottom, he would hit the stunner, but in the end, though, it was all about Angle. He was pissed. The match starts, he slaps Eugene right away, match is underway, and he just pretty much dominates him for most of it, other than the hope spots I just mentioned. And in the end, Angle goes over dominant in decisive fashion, hitting the Angle Slam, locking the ankle lock, forcing him to tap out immediately, thus regaining his gold medals. And afterwards, he would stand on the chair and have the referee re-award him the gold medals that he won in the Olympics in 1996. So really cool stuff. And the crowd loved Kurt Angle. So like I said, despite being a heel, unsurprisingly so, the guy was and still is so great. But as I mentioned, my only gripe with this was that they should have been doing so much more with Kurt Angle on this show. After that, we had a Randy Orton versus The Undertaker in a rematch from WrestleMania. People will tell you, I mean, I would probably agree that their match at WrestleMania was better. I remember watching this match on demand or something like that. They had it available either for free or for like $2 or something on demand in their WWE section. I ended up watching it. Or maybe I watched it on Orton's DVD. I don't remember exactly, but I enjoyed it then. I enjoyed it this time. I thought it was a really good match. Like I said, I feel like the WrestleMania match might have been a little bit better. In this match, right when it was starting to get hot, that was when it ended. Like, right when you started to get to the finishing sequence and the reversals of the RKOs and the tombstones and all this other kind of stuff. Then we had the interference from Bob Orton, who was dressed up as a fan, and ultimately causing the distraction and allowing Orton to capitalize and pick up the win. So just as it was entering that next gear, that's when it ended. So that's my only real issue with the match. But other than that, though, another really good match from these two. They had great chemistry and another awesome feud. Kind of an underrated feud, in my opinion. A great feud from the year of 2005 that put Orton over the top. I mean, he was already a world champion by this point, but let's face it, that world title run was basically non-existent. That did nothing to help him whatsoever. And turning heel for this feud with Undertaker early on in the year was the best thing that could have happened to Orton at this point in his career. After that, we had John Cena defending his WWE Championship. I'm still stuck on Orton versus Taker. Cena defending his WWE title against Chris Jericho in one of Chris Jericho's final matches in WWE. It would be the next night on Raw. They would have a rematch and also another very, very good match from the two. And if Jericho lost, he'd get fired. He lost that match and got fired by Eric Bischoff. He wouldn't see him in WWE for over 2 years until he returned in November of 2007. But this was a really, really good match. John Cena... And it's funny, too. I think it might have been Jericho who said this, or another podcaster that I listened to. I don't know who it was. But they made a great observation that this was kind of the pay-per-view where people started to turn on John Cena. Not all the way, not a full John Cena hate that you see nowadays, but this is really when it started to set in. Like, there were loud chants for Jericho. Like, the let's go Cena, Cena sucks. But they weren't doing it on this show. They were doing... they might have been chanting that, I don't know, but I do remember at one point in the match that they were chanting, let's go Jericho, or let's go Cena, Y2J, whatever, and there were a lot of chants for Jericho, even though he was the heel at this period in time. Maybe they knew that he was leaving, and they wanted to kind of show their appreciation for him, I have no idea, but, like I said, it was somebody... I remember hearing someone talk about it a while ago, how this was kind of the turning point for John Cena, where people would start to turn on him. And it showed in this match. You can kind of pick that up based off the chant. So I thought it was kind of funny. But also kind of thinking back on it now, John Cena's year in 2005 was almost reminiscent, to me anyway, of Roman Reigns this past year. Now, granted, Roman Reigns would not win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in the main event of WrestleMania. That was probably for the better, but... Roman Reigns this year has gotten a lot of backlash from fans and the booking decisions and stuff like that. John Cena was very similar. But one thing that I noticed was that John Cena, in big match situations, much like Roman Reigns this past year, has delivered. John Cena had, the match with JBL I thought was good. At WrestleMania, not great, not nearly as great as their Judgment Day match. But you look at that match, Judgment Day with JBL, the Vengeance Triple Threat, this match, his whole series of matches with Kurt Angle, John Cena would deliver. And this was, when people, I don't know if this was, I'm pretty sure this was before, people were starting to think that, John Cena can't wrestle, which I think is absolute bullshit. He's not like a CM Punk or a Daniel Bryan or a Benoit or an Angle, don't get me wrong, but as a performer, the guy's incredible, in my personal opinion.
But still, this was during the year. This was the year, in my opinion, although he was WWE champion for as long as he was, and people got sick of him, whatever, he would deliver in big match situations with this not being the first time, and we would see that at Judgment Day in the match with JBL a couple months before this. But it kind of continued that strong streak of excellent title matches, excellent pay-per-view matches from the one and only John Cena. After that, we had for the World Heavyweight Championship a no-holds-barred match between Batista and JBL. Not a fantastic match. The match only went 9 minutes. They don't have great chemistry, so I was kind of somewhat happy it didn't go as long as it probably could have. I remember watching the Great American Bash match last year from the month before this, and it wasn't too good at all. It went a lot longer than this match did, so I'm so glad they went as short as they did on this show. But it was short, sweet, to the point. They got over. I mean, I'm probably not numb to it, but I've seen this match so many times that I don't think it's terrible. I've just kind of come to accept it. It's on Batista's first DVD. I always watch that DVD. I've watched it every year since like 2013. I've watched it. I watch it usually once every January. I don't know for whatever reason. I just kind of started that tradition a couple years ago. But I've seen the match so many times I've just kind of accepted it. And it's a good match. It's not great by any means, but Batista's hometown. They're in Washington, D.C. They want to give him a big win. Blow off the feud. Go extreme. I like the finish with Batista hitting the Batista bomb on JBL on the steel steps. A cool spot. You can't really complain. Batista goes over in dominant fashion. Nothing to complain about. Match only went 9 minutes, which is kind of inexcusable for a world title match. But in this case, I'm fine with it because, like I said, they did not have the best of chemistry. And then we get to the main event between Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels. Now, like I said, this was my first time ever watching this pay-per-view in its entirety. This was also the first time I've seen this match, which is crazy to think about. I've been watching wrestling for 7 years now, and I never bothered to go out of my way for whatever reason. I don't know why. Not because I didn't want to watch it. I just never felt the need to. Between Hogan and Michaels, I never looked it up on YouTube, never watched it on the network until now. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good match for what it was. Definitely a lot better than the Hogan and Orton match from SummerSlam 06. I'll talk about that in my SummerSlam 06 review. Not like an incredible match or as amazing as they were making it out to be. And easily the highlight of the match was Shawn Michaels' ridiculous over-the-top selling for all of Hogan's maneuvers, which reportedly was due to Michaels not wanting to do the job. And I mean, why would you blame him? How can you blame Michaels? I mean, Hogan is not a full-time guy. Shawn Michaels is. Kind of given, the CM Punk mindset. Why would you put over Hogan? He's already over like Rover. He's Hulk freaking Hogan. Shawn Michaels, I mean, he's already over too, but he's a full-time guy. So I don't blame Shawn Michaels for being a little bit over, a little bit upset over not being able to go over in this match. But other than that, though, it was an entertaining match. A lot of ref bumps, a lot of cool, a lot of crazy stuff like that. Eye pokes, and Shawn Michaels really kind of embraced his inner heel, so it was cool to see that heel HBK back, albeit for a couple of months for this feud with Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan looked fine, definitely better than a lot of his more recent appearances, like I said, at SummerSlam 06. His matches in TNA and whatever, kind of part of the reason why I never want to see him wrestle another match again, regardless of whether his racist remarks will play a part in that or not. Obviously he won't be at WrestleMania 32 unless this whole thing blows over in the near future, which I don't think it will. But even before this whole thing kind of broke down, I did not want to see Hulk Hogan in another match. I don't feel like he's physically capable at this point in his life, at this stage in his career, or whatever. But still, I thought this was a good match for what it was. Definitely a great Hogan match at the age that he was at and the stage that he was at in his career and all the back surgeries, whatever. Like I said, Shawn Michaels made it worth watching for all the awesome selling that he would do for Hogan during the course of the contest. Told a good story. Nothing really can complain about. Hulk Hogan goes over in the end. He kicks out of the Sweet Chin Music, but Shawn Michaels doesn't kick out of the leg drop. It is what it is, typical Hogan stuff. So like I said, I don't blame Shawn Michaels for being a little bit upset, but him being upset did make the match more stomachable, if that's even a word, but he would make it more entertaining with his awesome selling. If he wasn't upset, he probably wouldn't have done that. So kudos to Shawn Michaels. But yeah, a good way of going out the show. They would embrace each other after the match, kind of turning Shawn Michaels back babyface, and we would go off the show that way. So on the whole, as I mentioned earlier, a very enjoyable show. I thought this was a stacked card from start to finish. Some matches I didn't really care too much for. I didn't really care for the world title match. It was good. I didn't really mind it at all. Not a match you should watch out for, but it served its purpose. Angle and Eugene I just thought was kind of a waste. That was the only real match that I had a gripe with. Like, why did that match happen? Or, why would you pair Angle with Eugene of all people, But other than that, though, it was a really, really good show. The U.S. title match, the kickoff of the show, the quick title change, kind of a hot way of, anything can happen, kind of giving that pay-per-view the unpredictable feel that it should have.
The Edge and Matt Hardy stuff, not a huge fan of, but it kind of moved the feud along nicely, somewhat. Rey Mysterio and Eddie, I would have to say, was the match tonight. That was fantastic. After watching all their other matches in recent years, the match at WrestleMania, Judgment Day, Great American Bash, this was easily the best of the bunch and a great way of closing off that feud. Orton and Undertaker, another really good match. Cena and Jericho, another excellent match. Might be better than the ladder match. I'm going to say the ladder match was the best, but that was a pretty close second. World title match I already talked about, and the main event was entertaining for what it was and had that, big fight feel to it, considering it was the Icon versus the Legend, the first time ever, the only time ever. So it did have that going forward. But yeah, I would say definitely to recommend watching this show on the WWE Network before SummerSlam in just 15 more days. Definitely one of my favorite SummerSlams I've watched so far. Like I said, I'm definitely biased because I love the year of 2005. I'm so enamored with that year. So obviously I'm going to love this pay-per-view, but I thought it was a lot better than SummerSlam 03 and 04 combined. Easily the best SummerSlam since 02, which was better than this one, but it was still a very good show on the whole. So with that being said, folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I always appreciate it. Make sure to find me on Twitter and follow me there at WrestleRant. Give the page an all thumbs up on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Visit the website for my full written reviews of Raw, SmackDown, Impact, NXT, Lucha Underground is done for right now, but Ring of Honor, Main Event Superstars, everything else in between up there on the website. And last but certainly not least, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. So I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with another review of SummerSlam 2006 as seen on the WWE Network. In the meantime and in between time, guys, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.